Imagine the Mongol Empire at its height, stretching from the frozen rivers of Russia to the burning sands of Persia, an empire so vast, so ruthless, that entire cities vanished in its path. And yet, in the midst of this unstoppable storm, one Mongol prince chose a path no one expected. He embraced Islam, and he would defy even his own blood to defend it. This is the story of Berke Khan, the Muslim Mongol who stood against the tide of destruction. Berke was the grandson of Genghis Khan, born into the dynasty that had shaken the world. The Mongols were feared for their speed, their cruelty, and their unyielding discipline. Cities that resisted were burned, their people slaughtered or enslaved. To be a Mongol was to be a master of conquest. Yet Berke's fate would be different. Unlike many of his kin, who sought only conquest, he was destined to lead his people in a new direction, toward faith, justice, and a greater purpose. During his youth, Berke encountered Muslim merchants, scholars, and warriors across Central Asia. Their faith impressed him, not only their rituals but their sense of justice, their devotion, and their unity. Slowly, Berke's heart turned. He studied the Quran, listened to imams, and came to believe in the one God. In a time when Mongols worshipped spirits and power, Berke embraced Islam openly. He became one of the first Mongol princes to do so. His conversion was not just personal. It reshaped the Golden Horde, the part of the Mongol Empire he would one day rule. Under Berke, mosques were built, scholars were welcomed, and the call to prayer echoed across lands that once knew only the sound of hooves and war drums. For the Muslims of the region, it was as if a storm had suddenly turned into a shield. For the first time, a Mongol ruler protected them instead of destroying them. But Berke's greatest test came when his cousin Hulagu, another grandson of Genghis, marched west. Hulagu's armies sacked Baghdad in 1258, destroying the Abbasid Caliphate, massacring hundreds of thousands. The Muslim world trembled. When Berke heard of this slaughter, his blood boiled. How could he, a Muslim, remain silent while his own kin trampled the house of Islam? He swore he would never forgive Hulagu, even if it meant Mongol fighting Mongol. Thus began one of the most unexpected wars in history, a Muslim Mongol ruler declaring war on his own cousin to avenge the Muslims of Baghdad. The Golden Horde under Berke joined forces with the Mamluks of Egypt, led by Sultan Baybars. Together they formed a new line of defense against Hulagu's Ilkhanate in Persia. Mongol fought Mongol, but this time the war was not for plunder. It was for faith, justice, and survival. In 1262, the two cousins' forces clashed by the Terek River in the Caucasus. The battlefield was frozen, the air sharp with winter. Hulagu's forces, though fierce, were caught in a trap. The river's ice broke under the weight of his cavalry, drowning many of his men. Berke's army triumphed. For the first time, a Mongol prince had defeated another Mongol prince, not for land but for principle. After the battle, Berke strengthened his alliance with Sultan Baybars of Egypt. The two exchanged letters filled with respect, recognizing one another as defenders of Islam. This alliance was unprecedented. A Mongol Khan, once feared as an enemy, now a brother in faith. Together, Berke and Baybars formed a shield that would halt Mongol expansion into the heart of the Muslim world. Within his lands, Berke transformed governance. He encouraged trade, protected Muslim communities, and ensured the building of mosques and schools. Merchants felt safe, scholars thrived, and ordinary people prayed in peace. For many, he was not only a Khan, he was a guardian chosen by God to restore balance after years of chaos. Yet the war with Hulagu drained Berke's forces. Battles raged along the Caucasus. Raids and counter-raids burned villages. The Golden Horde suffered, but Berke never wavered. He knew his stand carried a cost, but he also knew that silence in the face of tyranny was worse. He told his men, "If I do not fight him, then I betray God and the Muslims." Though Berke did not live to see the full fruits of his struggle, his legacy endured. He was the first Mongol ruler to make Islam a pillar of state, paving the way for future Khans to embrace the faith. His stand against Hulagu inspired Muslims far and wide, proving that even the fiercest of conquerors could bow before God's truth. In 1266, Berke Khan passed away while preparing another campaign. His body was laid to rest far from the lands of his ancestors, but his name lived on. He was remembered not as a conqueror, but as a protector, not as a destroyer, but as one who gave his sword to God's cause. Berke's defiance against Hulagu was more than politics. It was a statement that faith was stronger than blood, that justice was greater than empire, and that one man's conviction could change the destiny of nations. After his reign, Islam spread deeper within the Golden Horde. Mosques flourished, Islamic law grew stronger, and generations of Muslims lived under rulers who followed Berke's example. His seed of faith had grown into a tree that would shade millions. Historians agree that Berke Khan's decision was a turning point in world history. The Mongol Empire, once a united force of conquest, began to fracture when faith and principle entered the stage. Had Berke remained silent, Hulagu's armies might have swept further west, destroying Damascus, Cairo, and perhaps the entire heart of the Muslim world. Instead, his defiance gave Muslims something they desperately needed: time. Time to regroup after the fall of Baghdad. Time for leaders like the Mamluks of Egypt to build alliances and resist. The Mongols, once seen as unstoppable, were suddenly shown to be vulnerable. Berke Khan's stand proved that history can be shaped not only by empires, but by individuals with the courage to act. His choice altered not just Mongol politics, but the destiny of millions who lived under their rule. The life of Berke Khan carries lessons that echo across the centuries. Born into a dynasty of conquerors, raised in a culture that valued domination above all, he discovered something more powerful than conquest: faith. His story teaches that true greatness is not measured by the size of an empire or the number of victories, but by the justice of the cause one defends. Loyalty to truth is stronger than loyalty to blood, and sometimes the most difficult struggle is against one's own family and traditions. For us today, Berke's example calls for courage, to stand for justice even when it is costly, to resist oppression even if it means breaking with those closest to us. His story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, conviction can illuminate the path forward. Despite his extraordinary impact, Berke Khan remains less celebrated than Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, or Hulagu. Their names fill history books and legends, while Berke is often little more than a footnote. Yet in the Muslim world of his time, his name spread like a flame of hope. Letters carried news of a Mongol ruler who had embraced Islam and stood to defend it. In cities far from his domain, people who had never seen his face prayed for his success. To call him the Forgotten Khan is not entirely fair. He was remembered by the scholars who found protection under his rule, by the merchants who travelled safely across his lands, and by the worshippers who raised their hands in prayer where once they had feared extinction. The story of Berke Khan is that of a man who transformed from conqueror to protector, from destroyer to defender of faith. He began as a grandson of Genghis Khan, expected to follow the path of endless war. Instead, he embraced Islam, allied with its defenders, and stood as a shield when the Muslim world needed one most. His decision changed the course of history. The Golden Horde carried Islam into the steppes of Russia and Eastern Europe, and future Khans would follow his example. Where once only terror spread, now the call to prayer was heard. Though his name is less known today, Berke Khan deserves remembrance. He showed that even one man, guided by conviction, can alter the destiny of nations. His life proves that belief in God can be stronger than blood ties and mightier than the sword. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to support the channel. Subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with someone who loves stories as much as you do. Your support helps keep the stories alive and ensures that the next adventure will be waiting for you. Until next time, close your eyes, rest well, and let the story stay with you.